What's the one thing in baseball you can't have too much of? Starting pitching. We're going to go deep from the majors to the minors, from A-ball to the complex leagues. You're going to find out all you could need and more about the Cleveland Guardians starting pitching for 2023, I should say, and beyond on today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Guardians. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. I want to take a moment. I'm Jeff Ellis. I spent many a year talking prospects in the draft, and now I get to talk with my lovely co-host over, I guess, this side, Justin. Only a hand was appearing on your screen now for the full weird effect.
I'll give you a high five. How's that sound?
There we go.
Virtual high five.
Virtual high five. We're gonna go, pitching. What arguably every team needs, no matter how comfortable you feel. You're either looking to upgrade it, you're looking for depth, or you're looking for the next guy up. So we're gonna start talking about the MLB roster. We're gonna get into the deep prospect pool of pitchers, and we're gonna also we've had some questions. We're gonna try and predict the rotation at each level as well. So you're going to get to hear about, 4 levels of the minors now, rotations, plus a major league rotation. But let's start with that major league rotation. And before we get into that, 2 quick old friend alerts. Roberto Perez to the Giants. Interesting, in spite of all of his injuries, that there was a bidding war for him. We still don't know what he signed for.
Red Sox.
And I believe there's a third team. I can't remember who it was. And then Yandy Diaz signing one of the most team-friendly contracts I've ever seen, 3 years, $24 million, that buys out a year of free agency. But for a guy who never got much of a signing bonus, I mean, that's huge money for him. So good for Yandy. But yeah, just wanted to throw those out before we talked about starters. And last COA, they're not trading Shane Bieber this year unless things go horrifically wrong. Like, I still see people like, what's a Shane Bieber to the Padres deal look like? I'm like, do the Padres have anything left? Like,
no, their meat has been picked over. Their bones left.
Jackson Merrill and Dylan Lesko and Jackson Merrill. But it's like Cleveland isn't selling their ace for too far away prospects. Like, they're just not going to happen. So yeah, it's let's put that at full hold stop. It's not to say that a reliever couldn't go to San Diego at some point this year. There will be a San Diego Cleveland deal. I'm going to call it now. Likely, I think, for a reliever at some point this year, because again, Cleveland will trade from their redonkulous depth. I'd have to go look at the Padres.
Won't be Ethan Salas. Will not be Ethan Salas, unfortunately.
No, I wouldn't be surprised if it's just, let's put it this way. There could be a situation where it's like, if anything happens to Zunino, it's like Austin Nola could be a nice backup if Naylor isn't ready to go, or even if he is and they want more of a bat. Adam Engel, Ohio's own. I'm kidding. I don't know what it would look like. San Diego's bullpen, they have some good guys at the top, but they have some uncertainty, and I have no idea what said deal would look like, but
yeah, there's nothing there that's interesting.
It's the Padres and it's the Guardians, so a trade is going to happen because that's what they do. They didn't have a trade last year, so I feel like the clock is ticking, right?
I'd say bring home Drew Pomeranz, but if they're trading for a reliever, they're not letting a reliever go. So,
but let's talk.
I'll take Johnny Hamza. By the way, I saw him last year in Fort Wayne. I'll take Johnny Hamza. Yeah, he was fun last year in Fort Wayne.
Drake Cronenworth. That's what we need to get is Cronenworth.
Ooh, okay. All right. So the Guardians, they did not trade a starter this offseason.
They did not.
We thought they would. I guess they still could. I mean, it's January 31st. Pitchers and catchers don't report for another 2 weeks.
Things
could happen.
The Orioles just brought in some nice depth, but that's kind of the one people thought is maybe Baltimore. They're not going to trade with the White Sox, but there's a team who suddenly needs a fifth starter.
Maybe the Padres would be interested in Zach Plesac. I don't know. Like
potentially. I mean,
they're starting Seth Lugo. Is Seth Lugo? Is he? He's been a reliever for the Mets.
He has been a starter at points, but it's not gone well when he has been a starter. Health has been an issue.
Jeff, he hasn't started a game since 2020. He didn't start a game the last 2 seasons.
No, that's what I'm saying. He's been a reliever, but at least he did start at times, but it was not. Effectiveness went down when he was a starter.
Boy, their depth is scary, by the way. They have Adrian Morahone, who is solid. But after that, in the minor leagues, it's Jay Groom and Brett Honeywell, guys who've never stayed healthy. And then after that, it's Reese Kinnear and Pedro Avila and Ryan Weathers. Like, the only guy that's somewhat reliable is Ryan Weathers. Their bullpen has no starters. And Nick Martinez, hasn't he had a bit of reliever at points too? Like,
he was a reliever at points for them. I mean, I guess, did you mention Ryan Weathers? I know he hasn't been successful.
I did, yeah.
But he's, I did like him a lot in his draft year. But again, like, okay, there's, if they traded, like, can I offer this? Plesac.
Johnny Hamza for Plesac? Yeah, okay.
How about, I don't know Johnny Hamza as well, but what about Hamza for Hamza and Weathers for Plesac? Like, I feel like Weathers is the perfect guy for Cleveland to try to fix. Just to go out.
Yeah, do they really have?
San Diego's so bad at pitching development.
Weathers? They are. Hamza, by the way, I don't know. I must have remembered him from 2021. He didn't play last year at Haya. He played the complex, so he must have gotten hurt. Maybe it was 2021. I remember him.
I mean, Matt Waldron has maybe a chance to start for them this year, and not
bring him back home.
I mean, it's ugly in San Diego, but let's go back to our Cleveland rotation. Yeah. Bieber isn't going anywhere, in spite of his much ado about the declining velocity. That he hasn't been as good since that Cy Young year, which again, he got to face the Centrals, which were mostly warmed over trash those years. No offense, but like those were not good teams in the Centrals. Yeah. He was one of the most effective pitchers in the American League. To me, he was a top 5 pitcher. 200 innings. You don't see as many guys get to there anymore. He misses bats. He doesn't walk a lot of guys. He's a true ace. He is a number one. Tristan McKenzie had some ups and downs. I mean, at the start of the year, he was pretty terrible for those first 2 months. Then he got sent down very briefly. It wasn't even like it was a long one. He came back up and was almost like a different guy. Had a fantastic year. 3.6 F4. Looked like a solid number 2 type with maybe some number 1 ceiling. His FIP, left a little bit desired. His home run rate was very high, and that's kind of
that's always going to be a thing for him.
But you look at the line, and the FIPs are different between him and Shane Bieber, but their K percentages are almost the same. Their walk percentages are very close. Bieber has a few more ground balls, but like their home run rates are very similar. They had a lot of things that are close. You have those two who I think are legitimate, like a ace and a number 2 with ace. I still think McKenzie has some growth potential. I mean, maybe he can add like a few miles per hour. I mean, he's got to still be like the skinniest guy in baseball if he thickens out at some point. But, you have those two at the top. Is there any thought that anyone else is going to move them out this year from those top 2 spots, barring injury or unlikely trade?
Barring injury, I mean, they have prospects who could. Like, I think, maybe not this year. Like, Espino, Williams, and Bybee could all ascend to number 2 and number 1 status. I think if everything breaks right, but I don't think it's going to be this year for sure. I was just checking to go back through it. McKenzie, I don't think spent any time in the minor leagues last year, did he? That was 2021.
I thought
he came out of the bullpen like for the first game because of how they were planning the rotation because of the short spring training. So he spent the full year up here last year, and he earned that $500,000
yes, but
bonus.
He didn't go down, but there was that. Am I wrong? Wasn't there a rough patch at the start of the year where he just could not, or was it that it was the inconsistency game to game that was the big issue?
He might have been. Well, he came out of that bullpen for the first game because of the rotation and the off days. I don't know. He had a pretty good. He was good. He had a bad July. He had a bad July where he gave up a bunch of home runs. But no, the reason he had a bad July is they were all bad. I'm sorry.
No, I mean May and April was.
I'm sorry, it was June. June was bad. He gave up 21 runs in June, and it was 5, 6, and 7 across three starts. He had a couple starts in between.
March, April, and May weren't great. Like those are, his xFIP was very high, and May was, his regular FIP was okay in March and April because his home run rate was for him abnormally low. But we do see
he had more good months than bad months last year.
He did, and he turned it around. Like you look at the first half versus the second. I mean, his first half FIP was a 422, his second half FIP a 289. Like he was definitely. And that's why you're hoping he found that second gear, because the second half he got better as the year. Not even second half. He just got better as the year went on.
Yeah, and his start against the Yankees in the LDS wasn't great. His start against the Rays was good. That was good to see, because remember in 2020, which we're not taking anything from 2020 really because it's 2020, but he did not have a good start didn't have a good outing, and I think he came out of the bullpen against the Yankees in 2020. In that weird series, but his start against the Yankees this past postseason was not good. The one against the Rays was, but I think he's got enough in the tank right now to be a number 2 starter in the playoffs at the end of the year. I just think it depends on which prospects emerge and if they do it this year.
I think he is a guy that is, kind of Pablo Lopez-esque, where like I don't think you just don't want to push him too strong. Like, he's probably just a 2 times through the order and then flip type, but I think he can be excellent at that. Like I said, I think he's a good 2, borderline 1. And you're just hoping, like I said, maybe he can I don't know if he's ever going to add bulk. Like it feels like he never has. No. And that's some part of we saw the inconsistent velocities a point, and we've seen like things kind of come and go for him in terms of that. And that's why I think you're kind of looking at more of a 6.5, 6 inning guy, get him twice through the order. He's going to be dominant for those innings, and don't press your luck.
I don't even know if it's the times through the order doesn't matter, but I mean, if you want to count outs with him, I think you can feel good about him getting you 18 to 20 outs a game, maybe 16 on a bad day. Anywhere from 16 to 20 outs a game, I think, is where you can expect him to be at some point. So I think that's fair, and I think that's still his good. He's going to have more good outings than bad. It's just he's going to have stretches where maybe there's something off command-wise, maybe he gives up home runs, and then that's why he's probably like a number 2, maybe even a good number 3. Like if he is your number 3 starter, that would be even more ideal. Like if you could go out and acquire a pitcher this year, like a Corbin Burns or a Brandon Woodruff or whoever else. If there's any kind of pitching out in the market you can go get, or if one of those prospects ever does ascend, I don't know if it'll be this year, but it'd be great to be able to push Tristan McKenzie back as your 3rd starter. And then I guess a year from now, you have to revisit if Shane Bieber is still in your rotation a year from now, because while we're pretty sure he'll be starting all his games this year for the Guardians, 2024 could be a very different story. So I think McKenzie is fine as a 2. I think maybe ideally he's your 3rd best starter, especially when you're talking about having a rotation with like Cal Quantrill or Plesac or Civale in it, because those are guys you would prefer not to be number 4, and those are guys, I don't know. I think Cal is more than a number 5, but he's not quite a number 3. Like, tell me if you think it would be.
I think we should save them for segment 2, just because we're running a little long here on our first one. So before we dive too deeply into them, we should probably take our first break and then come back and talk about that second grouping. I think it's very clear there's a top 2 guys you trust in the playoffs, and then the next 3. So we're going to come back, talk about those next 3 arms, as well as some of the top prospects in system on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. So make sure you are tuning in for that. But first, let's talk about our good friends over at FanDuel. Brand new sponsor. I love a brand new sponsor. I can't talk about too much, but we actually have another sponsor coming in the next few months that is another one I'm super excited about. But let's talk about the newest of the new sponsors. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to the points spreads to who will score a touchdown. If you're curious, right now, FanDuel has the Guardians and the White Sox tied at plus 160 for the division, 250 for the Twins. I feel like the Twins should be higher than the White Sox after the offseason. The White Sox have had.
Put money down on the Guardians if that's the case.
If I'm betting on this one, yeah, I would be probably betting the Twins because I feel like the plus 250 would be enough to make me do that. But I do like the Guardians. Like those are the only two teams I would legitimately bet on for the division.
The FanDuel,
no, they are a worse team there. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Sorry, a little slow there. So I think you feel good with those first two arms, McKenzie and Bieber as playoff pitchers. We can debate where McKenzie falls on the line, but you feel good about him. The next three, I think there's varying degrees of comfort. So I cut you off. One of everyone's favorite. I just need to cough in the mic now. And I can't remember what the other thing. Mispronounce a name, and we'll get bingo. Or I don't know if it's turned into a drinking game yet, and someone just passed out. But somewhere. I mean, always. Cal Quantrill. Quantrill is interesting from the perspective that he is the guy where people always want to talk about. Well, maybe the metrics don't quite measure him. Because a lot of the metrics do rely on K rate, and Quantrill is not that guy. I think Quantrill is a solid starter. I had someone ask me recently, and I'll ask you this question: would he be someone that you would want to give an extension to? I don't know. Yeah, I think
depends on the numbers.
Yeah, he is kind of what he is, and I agree with you. I don't know if he's a 3. He's not a 5. I mean, he's definitely like a solid 4. But if you're going to trade one of these 3 starters, he's probably the one you trade because he's the one who actually has value.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a team out there that would love to have Cal Quantrill, and he would be I don't want to say a known quantity, but he would be just a very dependable starter for a team that probably needs one. But also Cleveland needs a dependable starter.
Exactly.
Plesac is not a dependable starter because he's had his own self-inflicted injuries, and he's had
hurt his hand taking off his shirt.
Punching the mound, his COVID agents, violations.
Yeah, I mean, his agent's driving around while filming a video and talking and not paying attention to the road. His agents, it's very weird to see an agency drop someone when there's not he hasn't done anything big. This isn't some of the other players we've talked about. There's not a big, thing, but he's just so many small things that you don't know what's going on there, but Quantrill has been worth 2 wins every year. He doesn't walk anyone. The home run rate is okay. He doesn't strike out enough guys to be super effective. I mean, he's just the definition of kind of league average to a little bit more, and he's just reliable. He's a reliable back end starter, and there's value in that.
I could see Cleveland trading a year from now. I don't think they'll do it now.
No.
Unless there are pitchers just knocking on the door that absolutely need opportunities that you were okay, we can't keep them out of the rotation. But I think they would maybe move on from Plesac and Civale first. And I think that also comes in the form of a non-tender this coming offseason, and they wouldn't move him now unless there was some real good deal to be had. I don't know. It really depends on I can't imagine this team trying to win a playoff game or playoff series this year and saying, okay, we'll go with Bieber, McKenzie, we'll go with Allen. I mean, I guess you could. Danny Salazar did start a wild card game, although Justin Masterson would have started that game because if he was healthy, so they weren't.
I mean,
they wouldn't
Salazar
have done that.
Was also his stuff was filthy at that time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm saying I'm saying would this team rely on a Williams or a Spino? And I guess they could because that's the same level of stuff we're talking about. But I think Masterson would have started that game if he had been healthy, so it wouldn't have been. But I'm thinking who would they rely on in the playoffs? And I'm maybe they rely on Quantrill more than Plesac or Civale, but they want them around. I don't know. So
could it be Morris?
Yeah, that's the other question.
I mean, it's the innings cap, but could it be? Oh, look at who had that prepared. I didn't even know you had that ready to go
already. Yeah, so I think we agree. Like the starting rotation, barring something coming up here in the next 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody in the first week of spring training always gets hurt. There's always somebody who has, Tommy John, their elbows barking. They have some sort of injury, and that could be Cleveland. That could be somebody else. So I wouldn't rule out like a team losing a starter and calling Cleveland, being like, "Hey, can we get Quantrill? Can we get Plesac? Can we get Civale?" and see what happens, and that could open the door for somebody. But barring anything like that, does Cody Morris start the year in the bullpen? Because if not, if he doesn't start the year in the bullpen, he's going back to AAA. And what is his role in AAA? Because AAA, we're going to get into all the rotations. What in the world does he do at AAA?
I think I mean, we'll debate it in segment 3 or in the after show, but I think he does start the year in AAA, just continuing to build up innings after missing time a year ago. Like, you need him in a starter role. I don't think there's going to be a spot for him because, there's reasons to think there's more in Civale than what he showed last year. Again, health has been his bugaboo. I love Saros to death. He had a tweet from, and I don't remember who he was quoting, about the healthiest rotations of baseball are the ones most likely to be healthiest, and Cleveland was 3.
Which is wild, considering Civale.
Wild, because Civale has never had a healthy season in the majors and the minors, never a completely healthy season. Plesac has been a disaster zone. McKenzie, he's been healthy outside of that
healthy season,
outside of that time in the minors where he missed a bunch, where he had like his Espino like season, or maybe more Cantillo, he had more of a Cantillo like run for about 2 years there. And then Bieber, he missed more than half of the 2021 season, so it's like, right. And in that season, everyone we talked about also missed time with injury, so that was mind blowing to me to be like, they're the third healthiest rotation. Wait, what? But that may not necessarily be that they're healthy. It means everybody else is also having bigger injury issues. But I think, that was great radio / podcast there. If you're looking for why they haven't traded Plesac, it's because it's a sell low right now. Last year was his worst season, and what he maybe does best is control a running game, his pickoff move, and everything else, which might be more valuable. So there is a world where they're trying to rehabilitate value. And if they do feel like someone like Morris is ready by June, there is their old friend San Diego, who probably are going to need a starter around June. They've done those early. The Brad Hand deal was beginning of July, right? Like, they have done those. It was after the All-Star break. It was the day after the All-Star game. So, but they've still a relatively early trade for that. Like, I don't think they would hesitate to pull a trigger. Yeah. I don't know exactly when the Clevenger deal was in that weird 2020 season. It's hard to say like what that was like relative to all things, but that was like the last day. Yeah. It's a weird, he's in a weird situation. Like, he's a great success story for this team as a day 3 pick, has had some, but at the same time, his highest WAR is still that 2020 season when he threw 55 innings. Right, and all against AL Central. So, is Cody Morris is he a reliever? Is he a depth starter guy? Because that's the question. Like, right now, I could see him being in the bullpen because it just makes sense for him to be in the bullpen because he'd be a great weapon out there, and there's just no room at the end in AAA. And I know you need depth starters at AAA. So right now, the AAA rotation, we can just kind of skip ahead a little bit. Your AAA rotation is something like Curry and Gaddis, who have a little bit of experience. I'm sorry, Pilkington has experience from last year. He is probably, if Morris is in your bullpen, Pilkington is your first option because he has the most experience from last year, likely. And then you have Curry and Gaddis, who both had a little taste last year. Cantillo was on the 40, but I think they're going to have to be careful with him this year, just building his arm back up after the shoulder issues. And that is it for guys on the 40. Like, they don't have a lot of guys down there. There are some teams that have like their entire AA and AAA rotation is on the 40-man roster. And as we've been talking about all offseason, there's not a lot of roster fodder. So if you need to get like trademark Tony Lastoria.
Right. But how are you going to get Peyton Battenfield on the roster if you decide that you need him for a start? How are you going to get, Touki Toussaint on the roster if you decide? That's another question too. It sounds like Touki. Yeah, it sounds like he's going to have some sort of multi-inning relief role, but he's going to be in AAA to start the year unless he just has like a bang-up camp. But like, it's not deep in AAA, which is the issue. Like, you could always make Morris and Morgan like a little tandem opener if you ever need a spot start. Those guys can both go like 3 innings apiece. Depends on how stretched out they are, and you wouldn't be able to use them the next day. And they both have, I think Morgan, I think still has an option. He'll have 2 options this year. Morris still has all 3. They were really smart about Morris last year, by the way. If you didn't notice this, I didn't think about this, but Morris was added to the 40-man roster, and then he was put on the 60-day IL on the Major League squad because they couldn't.
Didn't have space. They were just in a mess. They needed that to open, with him and Vargas. They were just juggling.
But you know what that did? That put him in AAA. He got service time for that, but he didn't burn an option because he was in AAA on rehab when he came back. So that didn't burn the option. And as soon as his rehab was over, he was called up. So Cleveland never burned an option on Cody Morris. So that was a pretty nice little nifty move they did there. So those guys both have options. Although in AAA, you have 0, except for Tim Herron, you have no relievers. We're not going to do relievers today, but they have no relievers.
Yeah, that's why Tuki Desan, I think, is they've kind of
but you still got to put him on the 40.
No, they're not going to put him on. Oh, you mean like someone they can call up? Well, I think that's, like I said, we're going to take – we'll be back in a second to kind of debate this AAA rotation. We still got to talk about Civale a little bit. We really haven't given him his moment in the sun. But we're going to be back in a moment to get into – who's going to be maybe moving into that relief role, who could be the emergency relievers on this team, and what could happen to maybe clear some spots to allow for some relief help on today's Locked On Guardians. And I think, to kind of get back to that one, I think Morris is a starter, but he's going to have an innings limit, but I think he is a starter as long as he's healthy. If he has another year with struggling health, I think you just kind of say we're going to be an elite bullpen weapon with the many other elite bullpen weapons. I think Curry with his pitch mix would play up in the pen. And, he was, I think focusing on like 2.5 pitches. Like I'm not sure it's 100% a starter's kit for him. I think he's a very good pitcher, but I think he could be, he's a very good minor league pitcher. I think he could be a plus reliever. I don't know if I would say the same about him as a starter, but I think it plays up. And then Hunter Gaddis, I think Gaddis is likely more of a reliever. The separator between him and Curry is that changeup is a weapon. Like it is a legitimate weapon that kind of gives him an opportunity to, get out left-handed pitching. And he's got more velocity on the fastball, and it's kind of emerging. Like that he's been slowly adding. He's not one of those guys like Bybee where it's all jumped at once. We've seen Gaddis kind of add a little bit every year. So I think, listen, the guy's built by like a defensive end. So it's not,
he's huge.
He's huge. He's one of the biggest pitchers in the entire system.
He came from the biggest.
Yeah. And he came from a program that like had never sent anyone to Team USA before. It was not a big school. Like he did not as a knock on anyone there, but just in general, it's like they hadn't really they haven't had players like him go through there. He didn't get quite what he would have gotten just in terms of facilities if he'd been to a bigger school in terms of working on things. So he's kind of a late bloomer. Like if he had gone to Georgia Tech like Curry, he might have been would have been a bigger name. Maybe with some of those options that were available. But I think both of them might have pen arms long term anyways. But I think maybe is that where they go?
One of those two guys could be a bullpen. Yeah. I think if there's anybody in AAA that you're like, okay, this is a guy we can afford to call up and make him a reliever in an emergency where if we burn the bullpen out or somebody gets hurt and more. The question, this all goes back to what Morris's role is, though. If Morris is a reliever and he's in the majors, you've got a different problem. If it's Morris as a starter, I think Morris is probably your first option over Pilkington because he is the next guy who clearly has the best stuff. I would maybe argue Cantillo is on even footing with Morris in terms of stuff, but Morris has a little more experience in the minors than Cantillo does. And I guess the more recent, I don't know, both of them have very sketchy health records at this point. But I feel like Curry and Gaddis are guys you feel like you could move over to the bullpen because look, they're going to have innings. They can cover the innings in AAA if one of those guys moves up. They have a ton of AAA arms. So let me ask you now on January 31st, because this is exactly how it always works. Nothing's going to change. You're definitely going to not regret this, and you're definitely going to get this right. But who is in the rotation for the Guardians? Because remember, the opening day roster is always the thing people worry about, right? We always worry about the opening day roster. We always think, oh, man, how did Colin Cowgill make the opening day roster? How did Marlon Byrd make that team? How did
JB Shuck?
Or whatever, like Max Moroff and I forget who else was on that team. Geez, that was such a bad
Eric
year.
Stemets.
Those guys all started the year in the big league roster. Everyone's so worried about the open day roster. So this is just as easy to get right, obviously. Who is in the Guardians rotation on, let's say, August 31st?
Tukey Toussaint, Tanner Burns, Adam Scott. I'm kidding.
Adam Scott. Oh, pour one out, man.
I really like
high hopes for Adam Scott.
he was one of those guys I thought, maybe he turns it around. It's been around. That triple, I don't know. There is something to be said about that AAA park messing with pitchers. Like we've seen a few guys like Miklo Jack, Allen, Scott really scuffle with their transition. I mean, even Tim Herron we had on the show scuffled a bit.
I'm still blaming the baseball.
I think you're right. It's like I think it could be a mix of multiple things, but I think the baseball is probably front and center. But there's definitely something throwing guys
Huntington
off
Park
transition.
Too.
Yeah, it is not a pitcher haven. That is
okay.
Sure.
So who is your starting? Who is your starting
I think
5 in August?
Bieber, McKenzie, Quantrill, Civale, and I'm kind of debating in my head who I'm going to go with this last one. I do think Plesac gets moved or demoted at some point. I just think we've seen enough where either he's going to pitch well enough that he becomes a trade asset, or he's going to pitch poorly enough and not be able to hold on to it. And I think, because he's in that weird situation where he has that extra year of team control, but has an accelerated salary. So I think either, like I said, he'll move on or he'll be demoted. And then in that fifth role at the end of the year, because my only knock on Cody Morris and like Joey Cantillo is those guys, they have to build up. Same thing like Espino needs to be added to the roster at the end of the year, but these are all guys who are going to be on innings limits. So at the end of the year, it's harder to have that guy in an innings limit in that role. So I'm going to say Logan Allen, because he needs to be added as well. He's had no health issues. A lefty would be an interesting look. I think he's probably in a good place to maybe rebound. It was, I know a lot of people jump at us for the overreaction to Valera, that there's like this prospect fatigue with like guys like Valera and Rocchio. But I think even more than those two guys where, when we look at, and you and I both were pretty solidly high on Rocchio, just how there's like Valera, we do maybe have some fatigue, but it's like Logan Allen, how much is an overreaction to his AAA, like made him tumble out of top 10s and everything else. And he has to be added to the 40-man at the end of the year. And as we saw them do this past year, like almost everyone who needed to be added to the 40-man was added before the season ended. It was, Tim Herron and Martinez.
Well, Tim wasn't added until November, but it was.
But yeah.
But like
those are the only two.
And,
Benson, they added
Benson
everyone
else. Free agent.
Yeah, they added
Naylor,
everyone but
Curry, Gaddis, Brennan,
Naylor.
They all got.
Yeah,
Curry, Gaddis, Brennan, they all came up. I'm gonna go with you for the most part. I'm gonna say Bieber, McKenzie, Quantrill, but I'm also gonna say Logan Allen, and I'm also gonna say Cody Morris. I'm gonna say Cody Morris takes up one of those spots. I think they either move Plesac to the bullpen or trade him, and I'll say Civale either gets traded or hurt too. I'll say Allen and Morris both end the year with a rotation spot. And
listen, before we go to our after show, I know we have one commenter who's been, the biggest Aaron Civale defender. And, Aaron Civale, when he was healthy this year, listen, he was someone else who the start of the year was rough. But there's some really good numbers under the hood. But I think it's just the reason you and I are both kind of iffy on him is just the health. It's never stayed with him. It has been an issue. I was just pulling up his Savant data very quickly because I think that's where like the under the hood stuff looked really good when you look at it. But Yeah, like his walk percentage was 87th, his K rate 60, his chase rate 64, his curve spin is 95, his fastball spin 94. But he doesn't have velocity and doesn't have extension. So it's like the spin is almost balanced out by really low velocity, really low extension. So it's more of an average pitch. And he's a solid starter. If he pitches, listen, I hope Plesac and Civale both pitch well and they become interesting trade assets. But I think with both those guys getting more expensive, it makes more sense. Same thing with like Quantrill might get traded because he's going to get expensive. Like he is in third year of arbitration. He was worth what, 5.5 million this year. He might be in line to be 9 next year, and they might decide that's too much. So he might get traded because of that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. I think I don't know. I think he'll pitch well when he's healthy. I'm just going to say he probably either gets hurt again or they do trade him. And I could see Plesac going to the bullpen if they hang on to him, just because he's not getting that much money and they could use him out of the pen. I think he pitched out of the bullpen in the playoffs against Tampa Bay in that marathon, and he actually looked pretty good. So
did he actually?
There's always that.
one?
I think he did pitch. I'm pretty sure I was there. I should know, but let me tell you, when you spend 15 innings in a ballpark and you're there 2 hours before first pitch because it's a 12 o'clock start, I'll just say that was the first time I think I've ever had a beer. The first time I had a beer before noon since college. So we're talking over 10 years at that point. So it was a long day. That's all I'm trying to say. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure he pitched, but it was a good day in the end. But yeah, I'll say Plesac gets demoted to the bullpen or traded, and I'll say Civale gets hurt or traded. I know we're saying health has been something where you have a knock on for Civale, but Morris is the same thing.
Cantillo is the same thing.
Yeah, if it's not Morris, I don't know. Espino has to be added to the 40 as well, and I don't know. They're going to be so careful with his innings this year, and
I could see him as a bullpen weapon late in the year. Like I feel like he's going to be coddled, but I could see him honestly with what he is that perfect guy that you bring up in August, kind of like what they did, late with Will
Morris.
Brennan and some of those guys and Morris, and have him in that, because his stuff's so good. If he is healthy, listen, Emmanuel Clase might be the best reliever in baseball. So, and 99 is really good. Don't take 99 is a top 20 reliever right now in baseball. I'm not saying this is a knock on him. People think but Espino is immediately your number 2 reliever if you call him up. That's how good his stuff is.
Yeah, well, we talked about it on a past show, but
yeah,
just the bullpen. If they keep 99, if they don't trade him, which could be an option we talked about, but if they keep him and they have Stephan and they have Clase,
Henches and his stuff.
Henches, and if it depends on what Morris's role is, and you add Daniel Espino to that, my goodness, the game doesn't matter it doesn't matter who your starting pitchers are. If that's your bullpen, your starters can go get 12 to 15 outs. Your bullpen's going to take care of the rest. You're going to want to pull everybody but Shane Bieber. You're going to want to pull after the second time to the order because you're going to be ready to unleash the freaks. That is a freak bullpen, and you're just ready to let them loose on everybody.
We didn't even talk about Nick Sandlin, who had his ups and downs, but overall was good. And Yale,
he had health issues too. Yale was great. Morgan had good. Yeah, I
had points. It's it's unbelievable, and that's why again I'm still all for, if you can. You're not gonna be able to trade a reliever to get a starter. That's not gonna happen. But
they don't need to.
No, I would definitely trade a reliever. I don't know if it netted you a bat, if it netted you something interesting. I don't know. And especially as we get deeper into this year, at the deadline when relievers go for exorbitant amounts of prospect capital, think about what we traded for Andrew Miller, even though in the course of 2 weeks, everyone who was traded for Andrew Miller, or no, it wasn't in 2 weeks. Everyone who was traded for Andrew Miller was released this offseason. Every single piece of that trade ended up being a player who was released or not re-signed this offseason. But that was a huge capital trade. So it's hey, if you get to that point in the year and Cody Morris is unbelievable, then I don't know, who knows what maybe you can net a 3-team deal and do something. But that bullpen is, we haven't focused on it yet, but my goodness, it's shaping up, and I'll put the mother of all jinxes on it, to be the greatest bullpen of my lifetime. Far and away, and a historic bullpen. This could be one of the greatest bullpens ever. I'm going to put that out there.
It could
hot
be.
Take.
Yeah. I don't think it's a hot take at all.
Do you have anything else?
I think it's a very rational take.
Yeah. Do you have anything else before we hit the after show and try to break down what these rotations are going to be across 4 levels?
Oof, I'm ready to dig in. Make sure you check that out because we're literally gonna tell you who we think is gonna be in the rotation. So if you're ready to hit a minor league game up, which I'm more than ready. I've been ready for months to see a minor league game.
Wish there were some near me. I'll be hitting the Northwoods this summer.
I don't know. Does Lake County play in Beloit?
It's not close. Beloit is still like a 40 plus minute drive to get.
I drive that far to Lake County and Akron.
No, I know it's just hard with kids.
I also don't have kids. I don't have kids. Yeah, so
that's my separator. Yeah. 2 kids under 5 makes a lot of things more difficult. But I want to thank you all for listening, rating, reviewing, downloading. It helps. Remember to click the button and do all of that jazz that everyone else literally says to do. And we just appreciate you. We love the interactions. We love the comments on Twitter. I respond to all of them. No, even when you're negative, I will say thank you for your comment and move on. But we appreciate the interactions and the support that has helped grow this show. A year ago at this time is when this thing started on YouTube, and I was doing 26 views. 26 views in February of last year. We're now we look at yesterday's show where we hit 300 plus and we're like, oh, that's a low one. So just, a thank you to everyone there in terms of the YouTube and even the watch rate is up. So I think that's all thanks to my fantastic co-host, Other Side. But thank you all for listening and go Guardians, go.
All right. Whose rotation is this better than in the majors right now? Connor, let's say
okay.
All right, let's say Cody Morris starts the year on the major league.
I think he does. Oh, okay. See, I think he starts in AAA.
Well, okay. Well, all right.
I still because I think it's going to be Heron in that spot. I think it's going to be that kind of flex spot is Heron with Morris in AAA. Barring
I think if you have Morris in the bullpen to start the year, and you need to get a fresh arm, like you have a guy who gets hurt, or you have a guy that doesn't, like one of the starters doesn't have a good game, he gets knocked out early, or you just have a long extra inning game. I think Heron and Morris can play the I-71 game a little bit this year. So I think it makes sense to have one of them in the majors and one in the minors because Heron's the only pure reliever.
Yeah, so that's why I think that's why I think it's Heron to start the year and Morris in AAA. That's, because I think Tito's going to want 2 lefties, even though it's not necessary anymore. I think that's, and I'm not alone in that. I'll point out Zach Meisel is also called that one. I said it on here first. Yeah. Zach doesn't, I don't think Zach listens, so I'm not saying he copies. I'm just saying we both had that thought independently, is what I'm stating.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that
I think they're going to want to stretch him out a little. I think they're going to want him to get reps to get prepared to be a starter.
He'll start. He'll be a starter, and I think in spring training they'll stretch him out like a starter. Mm-hmm. I think they'll decide at the end of spring training what his role is at that point. All right, let's say okay.
I think they're just going to want him in a starter role. That's why part of the thing. Like I think they're going to want to keep him in that role. That's my thought, but I could be wrong.
I think you're fine with the 4 that are on the 40 as your depth. Really, I mean, I know it's well. I guess I'm not going to count Cantillo yet. So
no,
but let's go with your theory that Morris is a starting pitcher in AAA to start the year. You've got Morris, you've got Pilkington, you've got Curry, Cantillo, and Gaddis. That's the starting 5.
Yeah, and then Logan Allen has to, or no.
Well, Logan Allen has to be in that rotation because he was in AAA there last year.
It's Morris, Pilkington, Gaddis, and Curry. That's 4, right? Who am I missing? And then Allen would be your 5.
Cantillo.
Oh, I think Cantillo starts in AA.
Yeah, I could see that. I think he starts the year in AA. Okay, so
yeah.
Pilkington or Morris, Pilkington, Curry, Gaddis, and Allen are your starting 5. That doesn't include Battenfield, who had a kind of a rough year last year, but he's still around. I mean, that's who. There's got to be rotations that's better than in the major leagues. Like I would take that rotation over the Nationals. The Nationals, well, okay, Cade Civale might start the year in the majors with.
He's not looked good in the minors though. I mean, in the majors, like he's a guy who's like seen his stock hit every year.
But he's got more upside than a lot of those guys. Like, okay, their rotation right now is projected to be.
I mean,
Gray,
I would
Corbin,
honestly,
Williams, Civale, and
I would take Allen. I would take Allen and Morris over Civale right now. That's me. Okay. I know most wouldn't, but I would.
How about the athletics rotation? They just traded Cole Irvin. their rotation is projected to be right now.
That's who the Orioles got. That's when I was trying to think about who the Orioles got. That's right.
They have Blackburn, Caprillion, Racinski, Shintaro Fujinami, who might be a reliever, the guy I got from Japan, and Ken Waldenchuk, who we both like Waldenchuk, but I would take Cleveland's AAA rotation over them, wouldn't you?
Yes. How about Baltimore's rotation of Kyle Gibson, Cole Irvin, Kyle Bradish? Listen, I've been driving his bandwagon for years. Still love him. Dean Kremer. And they have Grayson Rodriguez listed. I don't know if Baltimore's going to break camp with him, but if not, like maybe Austin Voth is their fifth. Like, I mean,
yeah,
that's
I actually used to like him back in the day. Yeah,
I think that's another rotation. It's bad.
What about even the Rockies? Like the Rockies rotation to me is still pretty iffy. Like you've got Herman Marquez, who okay, Kyle Freeland, not been great. Jose Urena is pretty mid, if not worse. Austin Gomber was pretty awful last year, and then Connor Siebold. That's a bad rotation. That is a 100 loss rotation. Like I would take Cleveland's prospects over them right now. I know we're being homers, but
yeah,
that's a bad rotation.
What about? Listen, this one is one is better, but at the same time, like Chris Sale, Corey Kluber, Nick Pivetta, James Paxton, Garrett Whitlock. 3/5 of that rotation could be like hurt for the entire year.
3/5 of that rotation was a great rotation in 2016. Yeah. 3/5 of that rotation was like a 2016 super rotation. Now it's yikes.
And if those guys go down, let's see. Let me pull it up. Brian Bello, Brian Mata, Chris Murphy, Josh Winchesky, Winkonski, another Ohio kid I know from my recent work. Brandon Walter, like Brian Bello is interesting. The rest of that group is kind of brutal.
How about the Pirates even? The Pirates have Roansy Contreras, who's interesting. Rich Hill, I mean, they're hoping to trade him if he's any good. Yeah. Mitch Keller, who I think Mitch Keller might finally have a pretty solid year this year. He's never going to be as good as people thought. JT Brubaker was solid last year. Vince Velasquez has never been consistent. Like, no. I am taking the Guardians prospects over that rotation right now. Like, I think the Pirates have good people coming. Just no. Okay, so we think the AAA rotation is good, and we think that let's say Morris is in the bullpen.
Cincinnati has Louis Cessna and Luke Weaver projected to be in their rotation. Graham Ashcroft, Nick Lodolo, Hunter Green.
I mean, Lodolo and Green
are good, yeah. But after that, I agree. Like I'd taken those two, but it's like you could argue that anyone on Cleveland's AAA rotation would be the number 3 starter in Cincinnati.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So let's say Morris starts the year in the pen. Let's go with that assumption. Even then, you still have.
Was Batenfield your 5 then?
Maybe. I mean, why not? Why not Tanner Bivey or Gavin Williams? None of those guys need more time at AAA. They don't. I know they only spent half a season there, but they just don't. They don't need to be there.
Yeah, but I feel like they'll probably just slow play him because of what they
have.
Thanks to congestion.
It could. It depends on what you do with the rest of your.
And they've always kind of liked to do those like mid-year promotions to AAA. Like they don't have a lot of guys just start there. They've always been that kind of like get your feet wet, then get moved up type of organizations. I feel like I know they did spend some time in AAA last year, but it feels like their approach has always been like I keep trying to think of the last guy who like. I mean,
they've been aggressive.
Maybe.
They've been more aggressive.
They have, but they've still liked kind of that get a little bit at this level, produce, and then move on. Like they've
got to move guys along though. That's the problem. They have the real log jam comes from low A and high A because you've got to push. They've got to push a lot of high A starters to AA this year. You've got guys returning from injury like Shane McCarthy and Ethan Hankins. So you've got to make room for certain guys like that. That's why I think they can push guys up.
Hankins, I mean, listen, is Hankins in your top 50 prospects?
Yes.
Okay. He is not in mine. Is he in the 40s, I assume? Probably. Like, isn't it just, I mean, are you really going to block any of these other guys for him? Like, I feel like it's probably a situation with Hankins where it's like you talk to him about a relief role. Shane McCarthy has been a great organizational soldier, but like, maybe you talk to him and see if he's willing to be Tanner Tully. Like if he's that guy who's just going to move all over, up and down.
Well, he's coming off a TJ, so I don't think they're going to do that to him. That would be pretty.
Yeah.
I think that would kind of stink to do it to a guy who's coming off TJ. But I don't know. Well, okay, their pitching depth when wasn't the same as it is now. It's gotten bigger. But
he's not going to have a starting spot.
when I saw McCarthy last pitch when he was healthy, he started to look to me like a Plesac or Civale where he could be a back end starter. I thought he was showing some stuff that he could be.
No, and I agree with that. But like this whole system, like
I know,
is full of
you've
guys
got other
with higher
guys
ceiling.
for sure. I'm not saying McCarthy's ceiling is anywhere near some of the top prospects, but McCarthy I think has a real chance to be an interesting starter if they let him recover the right way. So yeah, maybe Battenfield's your 5 if Morris is in the majors. Probably. I don't think they're going to give up on Battenfield yet. They could put him in the bullpen, I suppose.
Tobias Myers, just Ruben.
Anyway, we're going to move on.
Junior.
No. Okay, so AAA is either Morris, Pilkington, Gaddis, Curry, and Allen, or it's
probably Batenfield if not Morris.
Yeah, Batenfield, not Morris, moves up a tick. That's a good rotation, though.
Yeah.
Okay, AA is where it gets dicey then, because
Cantillo, Espino, Bybee, the big 3,
and Williams. Right, so you got a giant, massive
pitching prospect.
Okay, but here's your problem when you do that, because from high A, you've got to promote. Doug Nikhazy finished the year in AA. He'll start the year in AA. You still have Tanner Burns. You've got to push. They don't have to push a lot of guys from high A to AA. There's Tommy Mace. There's Aaron Davenport.
They traded for Ross Carver, who was
Ross Carver, who could be a starter. Right. You're getting, like I said, you're getting back Shane McCarthy. You're getting back Ethan Hankins. I think Hankins probably should start in high A, but with all the missed time, maybe they push him to AA. I don't think. I mean, they're getting back Alex Royalty, but I don't think he'll end up being a factor. But Hickman looks like he's a reliever now. So, and you got Tanner Burns too. We can't forget about Tanner Burns, the breakout prospect.
And Jamie Arias.
Yeah, Jaime Arias.
Yeah, I mean he's going to be Tanner Burns. He's going to be Tanner Burns.
Yeah, he already is Tanner Tully for sure.
He's the new Tanner.
But I mean,
Tully.
you've essentially got 5, 6, 7. You've got at least 8 starters in AA, and that's why I'm like, okay, Morris should go to start the year in the majors, and Cantillo should get a spot in AAA. Like, they have not used a 6-man rotation in AAA. They have utilized a 6-man rotation at every level below AAA. Yeah. What they've been doing is this. They've been doing a 6-man rotation because since minor league baseball came back from the pandemic in 2022, they're on a schedule where they have Mondays off. They play series Tuesday through Saturday or Sunday versus the same team. So you just get a 6-man rotation, which I really love, to be honest with you. And I think it's good for all these guys to get that sort of, that routine down. But as the year goes on, they have shifted to 5. Like late in the year, they end up moving to five guys. In AAA, they stay at 5 because they need to have a guy lined up every day in case a major league starter goes down. But in AAA, you have 8 starters.
Well, so we know the big 4. And the other thing with Cantillo and Espino, maybe they get some extra rest days built in with missed time. So those next 2 spots, Nikhazy was a 2nd-round pick. I think eventually he's a bullpen arm. That's me. I know we have different. This is a case where we disagree.
1 out of 2 out of 10, yeah.
Yeah, but I think he's got to be 5. So who's the 6th?
I mean, again, Burns and Davenport and Mace are guys you have to give innings to.
So I think it's Tanner Burns just based on draft. He's a first rounder.
Well, you could always go piggyback too. I think they've done that too. They've piggyback guys. It wouldn't stun me early in the year if Cantillo goes to AA to start the year, like you think.
If Cantillo and Espino piggyback,
you could see that for sure. Yeah, because I think they're just going to be careful with their innings. So you could definitely see that early on, and that gives you a way to work more starters in. And then you'll probably, if McCarthy should go to AA, you piggyback him with somebody, maybe Nikhazy or Davenport. Because I think Davenport's a reliever too at the end of the day, and I don't know what they do with Carver.
I see they traded for him, so
you could piggyback everybody. You could piggyback literally everyone.
But the additional problem is then you have no bullpen. So
not really. It's not that big of a problem because you still have Jaime Arias who can move up and down. You have Bradley Hanner and Justin Lewis from the Rule 5 draft. You have Eric Sabrowski coming back from last year's minor league Rule 5 draft. You have Zach Hart, you have Trey Benton, you have Davis Sharp. All those guys could be going to Double-A. Mason Hickman Double-A. They have enough arms to cover that. Trust me, they do. And there's still guys like Jerson Ramirez and
Luis
Oviedo is still on the roster for one more year.
I don't know. I guess I get confused. It's like, how many guys are allowed to keep on the roster?
I'd have to ask our buddy Arthur, who is the keeper of the roster rules. I think it's a 28-man active roster. Don't quote me on that.
But if you have like a 6-man rotation with 4 piggybacks, that's 10 guys, and then
you don't need as many relievers though if you do that.
Piggybacking, but I agree.
I'm just saying there is such a lot. Like there's going to be guys released in spring training because there's just so many
it feels
arms.
like it's probably too early, but like they also kind of know. Like it might also be the time for them to sit down and be like, okay, listen, Davenport, maybe multi-inning relief weapon. They need to start making some decisions on those guys. Tanner Burns has been around for a few, and listen, Tanner Burns going back to Auburn couldn't maintain velocity. His velocity last year went massively down. It's like he needs to be just moved to the pen, and he could be really good.
2 arm injuries last 2 years.
And he could be really, really good in the pen. That could completely revitalize what has been kind of a stagnant past 2 years for him.
Growth,
right. Yeah, he is a guy who moved in the pen, let that velocity play up, let him be that guy in college who was 97, 98 wasn't it the slider was the weapon for him as well? Or am I wrong?
He's got a good slider and a curve. I mean, they're both decent pitches. They would play up in the pen. But we've established Double-A is a giant cluster.
Okay, so let's do it. Let's just name it though. So we think, let's say Cantillo, Ospino, piggyback. Williams, probably not. Bivey, probably not. So then I think you don't trade for Ross Carver unless you're planning to use him as a starter. And no matter what we think about Carlos Vargas, he was still an interesting and valuable trade asset. They like Ross Carver. Ross Carver, I think, is one of those spots. So the last two, if we think like McCarthy, piggyback with
Nikhazy, they're still going to keep starting Nikhazy. They're not going to put him in the bullpen yet.
So no, I agree. So Nikhazy, so maybe because Burns has had arm problems, so then maybe the last spot is Burns and McCarthy piggybacking. Which then I know that leaves us with Aaron Davenport without a home.
And Carver.
No, I put Carver in. Carver's one spot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you got Espino.
That still leaves you without Tommy Mace with innings.
Tommy Mace. Yeah. So Tommy Mace and Davenport are the two who don't have a spot at that point in time. And I know Mace.
That's why they make a trade.
Yeah.
I mean, and let's be honest, guys will get hurt too. Somebody will probably get hurt.
They're not going to have everyone. And the other thing, to be honest with, it's like, yes, Tommy Mace was a recent 2nd-round pick, and he should have excelled in high A, and he didn't. Like, they've had guys who it wouldn't be on the realm of possibility for them to have him be part of this high A rotation.
Yeah.
To start the year.
I thought he would have the success that Jack Leftwich did. Let's talk about Jack Leftwich. Let's move on to high A. So
yeah, he's really
high A is going to be interesting.
Yes.
So guys who from low A have to move up. You have Will Dion and Rodney Boone end of the year in high A last year from low A. I think they're back. You've got Jack Leftwich, who was next. That's 3 guys right there.
Trent Denholm.
Trent Denholm's got to move up. Ryan Webb's got to move up.
Well,
Reed Johnston, who had a good year, has got to move up.
Webb didn't have that many innings, so he might end up.
Yeah, but he's like 24. You can't put him in high A.
I just wonder.
Ryan Webb can't go back to low A. He is too old. He is going to be 24 years old this year.
He is, but it's like arm injuries and everything else. He essentially hasn't, it's the really, I'm just saying, if you're going to play devil's advocate and because they're in such a bad situation that he is the one guy from that group, I think.
Well, you say bad situation like they don't have any arms. This is
bad situation of not having enough spots. Not like
right. It's bad. It's bad. Good is what it is.
Yes. They don't have the.
And you also have. What do you do with? I like Reed Johnson a lot. I watched a lot of Reed Johnson last year. I think he's ultimately a reliever, but I really like the stuff. So he's got to be a high A guy, and they started him last year. I think he keeps starting. So what do you do with Messick and Campbell? Because I think Messick and Campbell are so advanced as college arms that they can't go to low A. They have to start in high A.
Messick so sure.
This is what I have right now written down. I have Messick, Campbell, Dion, Boone, Leftwich, Johnston, Denholm, and Webb. That is 8. Then there's Ethan Hankins coming back from injury. Who knows what
And
they'll do with him?
we have Tommy Mace, who we didn't. I mean, I know you maybe
have home in AA, right?
But we didn't have a home in AA.
Can you piggyback Boone and Boone and whoever else? Maybe you piggyback Hankins with somebody
Boone
just to get him. Well, Boone throws like 87.
I know Boone had a lot of strikeouts, but he's like, as I say, he's a high 80s guy still. Like it's
Dion is like 89, 90.
Yeah.
Will Dion is like Josh Tomlin.
Yeah.
Boone, I don't even think it's even that. I mean, he's got a great changeup, but if you're topping out at 89, they got to add velocity with him. But I don't know what you do with them. But I mean, Messick and Campbell have to have regular innings. I think Leftwich is too talented to not have regular innings. I think they like Webb, and I think they like Denholm. So Hankins, you do something with Hankins, and you do something with
Webb is definitely
Johnston.
If you're going to put Webb up, he's definitely a piggyback.
So Hankins and Webb as a piggyback.
I think you put I think Hankins ends up Penn. I mean, at this point in time, like they have so many guys that his development was a little stalled even before the arm injury. There were some signs of life, but it wasn't.
Well, I don't think
he's
totally
a priority
reshaped his physique. He reshaped his physique, and he needed to do that before he got hurt. And now he has. I don't know. I think they'll stick with him as a starter. He's too talented, and it also creates a trade opportunity for them if they develop him as a starter and he flashes like we think he can. He's a trade asset. So
at his age, is it like it just feels like when I would talk to people about him, it was not positive. The stuff is too tantalizing. I would keep starting him until you don't have to. I would never move a guy that talented out of the rotation unless I was absolutely forced to. I don't think they're forced to yet because you can get creative like this. Lenny Torres and Josh Wolf, guys that have been starters in the past. Those guys are always going to be a reliever. I don't know.
He came out. He was hurt last year, and he came out of the pen late in Lynchburg. I think he'll stay in the bullpen. Lenny Torres was a reliever in the Arizona Fall League. He missed time due to personal reasons, and then had to kind of rebuild his strength back up. He's a reliever to me too, so you leave them out. Then there's Alonzo Richardson, who is interesting. I don't really know what happens to him. Yeah, so I don't know. It's going to be a complicated rotation. There's like 9 guys for essentially. I don't know, 7 or 8 spots, depending on how much you want to piggyback early on. Who knows? But it's going to be fun. I can't wait. Because to me, Messick and Campbell have to be there, right? You can't start them anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, Messick, there's no point to it. In particular, even more so than Campbell. But I think you have to, those two and Leftwich are your priority. So you do that. And if you look at the other 3 spots, I think I guess Hankins with Webb is a 4. So then, I mean, Dion is one of those guys, again, if you look at some of the advanced data stuff, people really like him. It's like, is he a guy you piggyback? He feels like a guy maybe you want to see if he jumps.
So he starts still at 92. No, I don't trust it. I mean, I like the guy, but yeah.
So is it like maybe you do the piggyback with him and Denholm because Denholm hasn't maintained velocity either, but when it's there, like he's interesting. And then it's like, Boone Johnston piggyback. And then again, you have like no
relievers, and they have a full slate of relievers. You've got Hunter Stanley, Franco Alamon, who started last year actually, and you've got like Brodie Munoz and Petway and Thornton. There's a ton of relievers too. It's wild. Lowe is a little more interesting because I think there's a lot more undecided there. Maybe you could move guys back that way for innings, but
it's like I feel like did Boone get to high A last year? He did.
He did. He finished the year in high A. So
I kind of feel like Reed Johnston, even though he's like 24, might start the year in high A just because of.
Low A, you mean?
Or
Low A. He dominated Low A last year. There's no.
I get, but it's silly. Like.
He's going to be 20. He's going to be 24.
24. No, I know he's going to be 24, but it's like.
And he struck out 122 batters in 112 innings. None of those guys in that rotation should be going. Like if you're going to really say somebody, it should be Webb, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's like if you're. I just as a 19th round pick with middling stuff is more. They're going to have to. Somebody who is dominated a level is probably going to have to stay at a level because.
See, I don't think Johnson has middling stuff. I think he's got good stuff. I just think he's a reliever because of the delivery and the fact that he's probably a 2-pitch pitcher. But I wouldn't say his stuff is middling.
I don't know. It's just.
I watched him a lot last year.
Okay. I don't know. Like I was looking at the guys who did not get the bump, and it's like Johnston or Webb. So it's like maybe and those they're near identical in age.
Well, they had to have somebody cover innings at the end of the year. They didn't send anybody from Arizona to Lynchburg at the end of the year. So,
and that's the thing. Like, if you do what we're talking about, all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, that high A team. There's not a ton of options as you were kind of setting up there.
Low A. Well, low A is interesting.
Low A. Because, that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, like Austin Aldino, who's been kind of around, he should move up finally. I think low A is where Dylan DeLucia probably starts.
Austin Peterson, the Connecticut arm, who has some good data.
Adam Tulloch.
Yeah.
Peterson for sure.
Does Richardson repeat?
Yeah, I could see Richardson going back there.
He's younger, right?
He's very raw. He was a two-way player, yeah. Jack Jasiak probably goes there. And after that, it's kind of a crapshoot, to be honest with you, who goes to low A.
Because Jake Miller is still hurt, right?
He's still hurt. I don't think he'll be back next year. I can see Franco Alamon repeating in low A because he was hurt at times, so I can see that as well. Yeah.
I was pulling up the draft class. I was just kind of pulling up their draft class to see who are the other guys.
Yorman Gomez is a guy that would be interesting. Yeah, we're going really.
What about Magnus Ellerts? Was he a starter?
Isn't he just a reliever? Okay. Yeah, he's just a reliever.
He's just a reliever. That was, and then Jacobs was another reliever, and Rapp was definitely a reliever. So I mean, those guys will be part of the pen.
Not as complicated.
Do you think Rivera Jr.? I know he's a JUCO guy. Do you think he is?
They're all in
Arizona. Complex league. Yeah.
Yeah. Who are some of the guys? Who are, to me, these are the names. I'm going to run through this quickly because we're over an hour in already.
Yeah. The guys we said, it's pitching. Starting pitching was always going to run long.
We should have done this over 2 days. The guys in Arizona, to me, to keep an eye on, though, are Jacob Zibin, Jackson Humphreys. Javier Santos, for sure. I'm trying to think who else will probably go.
Rivera is interesting. I don't know if he's a starter or reliever, but I mean, he can definitely bring heat.
Yeah, people talked about, I don't know, Yorman Gomez was good last year. He might go back to high. He might go to low A. He might stay back. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of other guys that were in, over in Evilio Hernandez is a guy that's popped.
Was Tommy Ventimiglia the 2021 high school, like the one kid from the high school class? He's probably down there.
He really struggled last year. Yeah. So,
but I'm just trying to think like recent draft classes.
Yeah, Austin Aldino might stay in the complex league. He's only 19, but he should go to high A or low A. So we'll see. But anybody out of JUCO or high school from the draft class probably stays in Arizona.
It is interesting. Like that's the thing that we've seen them. They have not gone with a lot of like Latin arms. Like it's been, Latin America for bats, draft for arms. So there aren't as many of those complex guys to name to promote because last year's draft class the 2021 draft class had 2 high schoolers in it, I believe, right? Jake Fox and Ventimiglia. And so there's not that many. That is the one place where there's not a preponderance. No, I can't think of the word, but there's not a ton of depth.
Right.
So that's where I do wonder if is it Alman? Does Webb conceivably start in high A just due to injury as they try to fill in a spot? That's going to be the one case it'll be interesting to see. Even though again Webb and Johnson are like the 2 oldest guys who would be in high A. I don't know. It's a nice problem, but I mean at the same time like they need to just figure this out.
Yeah, they do. So we should probably leave it off there. I was gonna leave us time to talk about our top 10 pitching prospects in the system, but because we've gone so long, why don't we have everybody come back tomorrow and hear who our top 10 pitching prospects are?
Make a guess who is our 10th rated pitching prospect for each of us, and below. Guess who is 10th at the very bottom on the comments today. Again, thank you all for listening, rating, reviewing, downloading, all that fun jazz. We appreciate each and every one of you. We love interacting and having fun. I know people have asked about live shows. We can't do live shows right now because if we do a live show, it kind of messes with various things. So until we can get guaranteed 100 people viewing live, we can't do a live show. But we'll see as the season goes on and numbers, of course, go as we have news and fun. But Trucks will be leaving soon. College baseball is going to be starting in a matter of weeks. And get ready. We'll be coming back full time in a couple of weeks ourselves. So, again, thank you all. And go, Guardians. Go,